All parties involved in the escalating crisis in Eastern Europe are mobilizing, both politically and militarily. All European nations, the USA, Canada, and Russia, are tactically forming strategic alliances and blocs designed to respond to the crisis in accordance with their geopolitical and economic interests. Will the main players, America and Russia, find a common ground and end the tensions? What are the steps being undertaken by the parties involved in preparation for a potential war in Ukraine? Are there any agreements that can be utilized as a solution for the crisis? Welcome to World Econ News, your daily dose of economics and finance. If you are interested in topics influencing the world economies and global financial flows, this is the place for you. Watch till the end if you want to get the latest answers, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification button to get the latest updates. Let's go! Will the main players, America and Russia, find a common ground and end the tensions? The answer is very unlikely. Both sides are entrenching in their positions. They have already reached a deadlock. Most European states are pursuing sharply divergent approaches while busy dealing with domestic distractions. However, all evidence points that each European country is mobilizing according to its geographical proximity to Russia, geopolitical interests, level of dependence on Russia for energy supplies, and even historical reasons. Russia is still insisting that the US and its allies accept its proposals for ending the crisis. When Russia sent the proposals to NATO, its deputy foreign minister Sergei Ryabkov said, "The proposals are not a menu from which one can pick and choose this or that. They are complementary and must be considered as a whole." The United States of America, which is the one and only power capable of exerting enough influence on NATO to accept or reject the Russian proposals, has not and is not willing to compromise on the Russian proposals. According to US State Department spokesman Ned Price, the US will not make any concessions to Russia on potential security guarantees, and the only possible way to make bilateral agreements will be mutual steps to benefit both nations. The key point in that is that any steps that we would take would not be concessions. They would need to be on a reciprocal basis, meaning that the Russians would also have to do something that would help improve our security posture. Washington's official position since the beginning has been strong. It bluntly states that the US won't consider the Russian proposals to end NATO expansion. US President Joe Biden did say something rather worrying during a press conference in mid-January. He said that Russian President Vladimir Putin could move in. He has to do something. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov hit back at the claims, saying Russian forces have never threatened Ukraine. It is worth mentioning here that since the crisis began, Russian President Vladimir Putin has denied the existence of any plans to attack Ukraine. Some of the statements by high-ranking American and Ukrainian military officials actually reinforce Putin's take on the issue. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said that obviously we're mindful of things that the Russians could do that would potentially give us indications of some sort of imminent incursion. However, he went on, we're not there yet, but we are watching for those indicators very, very closely. Ukrainian National Security and Defense Council Secretary Alexei Danilov has also appeared to downplay the risk of a larger conflict. He said, "We don't see any grounds for statements about a full-scale offensive on our territory. It's even physically impossible." He added that Kiev was tracking the movement of Russian forces. Maybe seeing Russian troops is an oddity to our foreign partners, who finally saw that there are Russian forces and they move in a certain way. There is no reason for panic, and the foreign reaction has been overblown. Nevertheless, NATO, the USA, Canada, the UK, and most European countries are convinced that such massive Russian military mobilization and demands are anything but a signal for war in Ukraine. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has reportedly said NATO will not send combat troops to Ukraine. A number of NATO members already have troops in the country bordering Russia, however, engaged in training Ukrainian government forces in how to use weapons systems supplied by the alliance. NATO also said in a statement that it would boost its deployments in Eastern Europe as the Pentagon announced that it has put 8,500 troops on heightened alert. The US House of Representatives is also rushing a bill that would impose a series of immediate sanctions on Russia and give Ukraine $500 million in military aid. The Republican Party has been calling on President Biden to take a firmer position over the escalating crisis, while some Democrats are calling on Biden to impose greater costs on Russia. US President Joe Biden has gone as far as saying that he would consider personal sanctions on Vladimir Putin if Russia invades Ukraine. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been insisting that everything must be done to prevent Russian aggression. His government has been very proactive in providing lethal aid to Ukraine. A spokesman for Germany's Chancellor Scholz said the European leaders share the view that it was up to Russia to take visible steps of de-escalation. French President Emmanuel Macron said that he will speak with Putin in the coming days to press for de-escalation on the border with Ukraine. France is demanding that Russia reduce its military buildup. Italy warned of serious consequences over the escalation of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, but also highlighted the importance of keeping a channel of dialogue with Russia. Bulgarian President Rumen Radev rejected Russian demands that NATO withdraws its troops from eastern member states such as Bulgaria, calling them unacceptable and groundless. Germany seems to oppose sending lethal aid to Ukraine. It has been blocking NATO ally Estonia from transferring German-origin howitzer artillery to Ukraine. German officials have also said that they are ready to shelve the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which extends from Russia to Germany, in the event of war. The EU is currently working on a package of sanctions that would curb Russia's ability to convert currency, impose trade bans, and restrict access to key technology in the event Moscow orders an invasion of Ukraine. However, cutting Russia off from the SWIFT international payment system and placing sanctions on its energy exports are not being considered yet. This leads us to the second question. What are the steps being undertaken by the parties involved in preparation for a potential war in Ukraine? The US Pentagon has put as many as 8,500 US troops on heightened alert. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said, "We are not deploying them now, and still believe there is time and space for diplomacy." The USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group is beginning a significant military training exercise called Neptune Strike 22. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, "The exercise marks the first time since the Cold War that a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group is under NATO command." 30 members of the British Ranger Regiment, which is part of the Special Operations Brigade, were flown out aboard military jets that also delivered 2,000 anti-tank missile launchers to Ukraine. Spain and the Netherlands have taken up air surveillance in Bulgaria. The Spanish and Dutch sent 9 fighter jets as part of an air policing mission in Bulgaria, a member of NATO. Finland has enhanced its military readiness. Colonel Petteri Kajanmaa said, "Readiness of the Finnish Defense Forces has been enhanced due to the fact that the situation in nearby areas has become more unstable." He meant the Baltic Sea region with near areas. He added, "Instability in the Baltic Sea region stemmed from the unpredictability of Russia. They, the Russians, have expressed their goals clearly, but we do not know what actions they are ready to take." Sweden and Finland are working together militarily. Both countries have islands that are strategically located in the Baltic Sea. Both countries have jointly mobilized their navies in the Baltic Sea. A U.S. plane carrying Javelin anti-tank missiles, launchers, and other military hardware landed in Kiev recently. Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov tweeted, "Javelins in Kiev. A new cargo of security aid, launchers, and missiles with a total weight of about 80 tons. We expect the arrival of the fourth from the big flock of birds soon, thanks to our strategic partner." Canada sent a 200 Special Ops unit for deployment under the pretense of protecting the Canadian embassy. The Ukrainian armed forces have been massing all along the border with Donbass, Crimea, Russia, and Belarus. So are there any old agreements that can be utilized as the solution for the crisis? The crisis in Ukraine has revived the Normandy format talks that had been on hold since 2016. However, Ukrainian President Zelensky does not seem to be interested in recognizing any of the Minsk Accords, which are aimed at ending fighting in Donbass and the eventual establishment of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. He once said during an interview, "You are well aware that I didn't sign the Minsk Accords, and neither did anyone on my team." As of now, the final decision is up to Russia and America. If they succeed in formulating a new accord while providing concessions, the war in Ukraine and a possible World War III can be averted. Would you like to learn more about what influences the world economies and global financial flows? Click on one of the videos that showed up on the left, or go to our channel to find other interesting topics.